Ethan never thought he would come back to the old house on Blackwood Lane. It had stood empty for nearly a decade, sagging under the weight of storms, its windows blind with grime, its once white siding now stained a sickly yellow. After his parents' sudden deaths, he had sworn he would never set foot inside it again. But the letter had changed that. It arrived 2 weeks ago, written in shaky handwriting he didn't recognize, sealed in an envelope that smelled faintly of mold and iron. The message inside was short. You don't know what they left behind. You don't know what's waiting for you in the walls. Come home before it finds you first. Now, standing on the overgrown porch with the key trembling in his hand, Ethan could feel the house staring at him. The wood groaned in the wind, almost like breath caught in a throat. His heart pounded as he slid the key into the rusted lock, hesitating as the metal resisted. When the door finally creaked open, the smell hit him. Stale dust, mildew, and something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. Something in the dark beyond the doorway moved. Ethan stepped inside, and the floor groaned beneath his boots. The air was heavier here, thick with a dampness that clung to his throat. Dust motes swirled in the weak light from the open door, but deeper in, the hallway was swallowed in shadow. The wallpaper, once pale green, now peeled in long curling strips, exposing water-stained plaster underneath. His parents' framed photographs still hung crookedly on the walls, but the glass in several was cracked, as if from tiny impacts. When he leaned closer, he noticed something odd. Each photograph had faint scratches etched across the faces. His mother's eyes had been gouged out of one with something sharp. His father's smile was slashed away in another. A chill rolled through him, though the air was still. He told himself it was just vandalism, kids breaking in, messing around. But then he noticed the dust on the floor was undisturbed, layered thick, as though no one had entered in years. From the far end of the hallway, a door slammed shut. Ethan froze. The sound hadn't come from the wind. It was deliberate, heavy, as if someone inside wanted him to know they were there. Ethan's pulse hammered in his ears as he stared down the hallway. The door that had slammed was the one leading to the basement. He remembered that door well. It always stuck in the frame, swollen from moisture, and it took a solid shoulder shove to close it at all. But it had shut on its own. His instincts screamed to leave, to walk back out into the overgrown yard and never return. But something stronger, a gnawing pull, maybe the same force that had dragged him here after the letter, kept his feet rooted to the dusty floor. He took a cautious step forward. The silence was immense, pressing in on him. Then, just as he reached the halfway point, he heard it. A whisper, low, muffled, coming from behind the basement door. He strained his ears, trying to make out words. It was a woman's voice, but the tone was wrong, raspy, wet, as though the words were bubbling up through liquid. Ethan, his chest tightened. The voice knew his name. And then, faintly, he heard another sound layered beneath the whisper. The distinct, slow scrape of fingernails dragging along wood. Ethan edged closer, each step sounding impossibly loud on the warped floorboards. The whispering had stopped, but the scraping hadn't. It grew sharper, more frantic, as though whatever was on the other side could sense him approaching. He reached the basement door. The wood was swollen and splintered, the paint chipped away until only patches of gray remained. His hand hovered over the knob, slick with cold sweat. Don't open it. The thought throbbed inside his head, louder than his heartbeat. Yet his hand turned the knob anyway, as though compelled. It resisted at first, stiff from years of disuse. Then, with a shudder, it gave. The door creaked open a few inches, just enough for a sliver of damp, icy air to seep out and brush against his face. And then silence. No whispers, no scraping. Just the suffocating stillness of the house holding its breath. Ethan leaned in, squinting down into the darkness. The light from the hallway died almost instantly at the top of the stairs, swallowed by black. He couldn't see more than a few steps down. Then, from the pit of darkness, something knocked back. 3 slow, deliberate thuds against the underside of the staircase. Ethan's breath came shallow, uneven, but his legs betrayed him. They moved anyway, carrying him down into the darkness. Each stair creaked in protest, the sound swallowed almost instantly, as if the air below was too thick to let noise travel far. The smell grew worse with every step. Damp earth, rusted iron, and underneath, something sweeter, rotting, like spoiled meat left too long in the sun. Halfway down, the door behind him slammed shut with a deafening crack. Ethan spun, nearly losing his footing, but the only thing he saw was the faint outline of the door above, sealed tight. He was trapped. Panic clawed at him, but then his eyes caught something on the basement wall. Carvings, faintly glowing, etched deep into the concrete, jagged symbols that pulsed as though alive. The light was faint, just enough to outline the bottom of the stairs, and the figure standing there. It was small, no taller than a child, but its proportions were wrong. Its arms were too long, dangling nearly to the floor, and its head lolled unnaturally to one side. The figure didn't move. It just watched him. Ethan froze, unable to move as the small figure remained still at the bottom of the stairs. The dim glow from the carvings barely illuminated it, but that was enough. Its eyes, or what passed for eyes, were dark pits, hollow and wet, reflecting nothing. Then, without a sound, it was closer. Ethan didn't see it move. One moment it was at the foot of the stairs. The next, it was only a few feet away, crouched unnaturally low, tilting its head as if studying him. A thin, rasping breath escaped its twisted mouth, sending ice through his veins. "Why are you here?" The voice was high-pitched, childlike, but distorted, dripping with malice. Ethan stumbled backward, heart hammering. The walls seemed to shift around him, the carvings glowing brighter, etching themselves into his vision. Then he saw them, tiny scratches across the floorboards leading deeper into the basement. They weren't random. They formed a path, and the figure was pointing slowly toward it. Something inside Ethan told him, "Follow or it will come for you." Ethan's legs trembled, but he stepped forward, following the carved scratches that led deeper into the basement. The figure moved ahead of him, gliding, or perhaps floating, over the floor, always just out of reach. The basement narrowed, walls closing in as the ceiling dipped lower. The glow from the carvings pulsed rhythmically, like a heartbeat, and Ethan felt it inside his chest. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the figure's presence was magnetic, a horrifying allure he couldn't resist. Finally, the path ended at a door, one that had never existed in the basement before, or at least he didn't remember it. It was blackened wood, warped, with strange symbols etched into its surface. The carvings on the walls seemed to bleed into it, as if the door had grown from the basement itself. The figure stopped and tilted its head again. Then it raised a hand, or what passed for a hand, and gestured. The message was clear: "Open it." Ethan's fingers brushed the handle. The metal was icy, unnaturally cold, and his skin prickled. With a trembling breath, he turned it, and the door swung open to reveal darkness far deeper than the basement itself. From within, a low, wet growl rumbled, echoing in the walls, as if the house itself were awakening. Ethan's foot crossed the threshold, and the door slammed shut behind him with a force that shook the floor. The darkness inside the hidden room was absolute, thick enough to feel like a physical wall pressing against his skin. Then, faintly, he noticed shapes moving in the black. Shadows flickered along the walls, writhing, as though the darkness itself had life. A cold, wet stench filled his nostrils. Something had been rotting here for years. From the corner, a whisper, almost too soft to hear, breathed his name. "Ethan." He froze, straining to see. Then the room seemed to shift. The floorboards beneath him became slick, like wet skin. He stumbled and almost fell as something long and sinuous coiled around his ankle. He looked down. A black tendril, slick and pulsating, emerged from the shadows, reaching for him with a slow, deliberate hunger. As he kicked it away, a series of eyes opened in the darkness, dozens of them, reflecting the dim light of the carvings on the walls. They blinked in unison, fixed on him, unblinking and empty, waiting. And from the far end of the room, a voice rasped, dripping with menace. "You shouldn't have come back." Ethan stumbled backward, his breath ragged. The tendril slithered off his ankle, but dozens more emerged, writhing in the darkness like living shadows. The eyes all around him reflected a sickly, wet glow, and he felt a presence pressing in from every angle. Then, from the far corner, a figure began to emerge, taller this time, twisted and malformed. Its limbs bent at impossible angles, skin pale and glistening like wet parchment. Its face, was a grotesque mirror of his own parents, only distorted, their eyes hollow, mouths stretched unnaturally wide in silent screams. Ethan stumbled backward, tripping over the slick floor. The entity moved with impossible speed, its voice splitting into multiple, overlapping tones. "We've waited for you to see what lies beneath." The walls pulsed as if alive. Shadows stretched and reached for him. Whispers surged from the walls, naming every secret he had buried, every memory he had tried to forget. Ethan realized, in a freezing instant, that this wasn't just a room. It was a vessel, and he had just stepped inside something that had been waiting for him all these years. Ethan scrambled backward, chest burning, as the entity advanced. Its grotesque visage, the twisted combination of his parents' faces, loomed closer. Then it spoke again, its voice layering over itself in sickening harmony. "This house is not what it seems. We never left, we became it, and now you belong to it." The walls pulsed violently, the carvings glowing brighter. The floor beneath him shifted like a living thing, opening into gaping cracks that revealed writhing shapes. Pale, emaciated forms, half human, half shadow, suspended in darkness. Their mouths moved in silent screams, eyes locked on him, pleading and accusing all at once. Ethan's mind reeled. Memories flickered unbidden. Of his parents' strange behavior, late-night whispers, the suffocating feeling of being watched. Every suppressed fear, every hidden dread, now made sense. His parents had never left the house. They had become part of it, trapped by something far older and hungrier. And now it wanted him. The tendrils snaked closer, brushing his legs, tugging at his clothes. The entity reached out, its hands elongating into shadowed claws. Ethan's pulse screamed, "Run or die." Ethan's instincts screamed. Every fiber of his body begged him to run, and he lunged toward the far side of the room, blindly hoping it led to stairs or an exit. The shadows lashed out, tendrils wrapping around his arms and legs, pulling him back. He tore free with a guttural scream, the claws grazing his skin and leaving black streaks that burned like acid. The entity followed, gliding over the slick floor, its hollow eyes fixed on him. The whispers rose to a deafening roar, chanting his name, mocking his every step. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw a faint glow, a narrow staircase spiraling upward. Without thinking, he darted for it. His foot caught on something soft and wet, sending him tumbling forward. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he kept moving, clawing up the stairs with raw desperation. The air grew lighter as he ascended, though the chanting never stopped. The glow intensified, promising escape, or at least a temporary reprieve. But behind him, the entity's voice boomed. "You cannot leave what you belong to, Ethan." Every step felt heavier, like the house itself was dragging him back. Ethan's hands scraped against the stair railing as he climbed, lungs burning. Just as he reached the top, the stairs groaned, shuddered, and then collapsed beneath him. He fell, landing hard on the floor of the main basement room. Only it wasn't the same room he had left. The hallway stretched impossibly long, walls warped and pulsating, doors appearing and disappearing as if the house itself were rearranging. The air reeked of rot and decay, and the whispers had returned. Now multiple voices overlapping, screaming, pleading, mocking. From the shadows, shapes emerged. Not the small figure this time, but dozens of them. Twisted, half-human forms, pale and wet, their eyes empty voids. They reached for him with elongated claws, dragging themselves toward him with unnatural speed. Ethan realized with a sickening certainty. The house didn't just trap people. It consumed them, bending reality around itself to keep them inside. Every room, every stairway, every hallway was a shifting labyrinth designed to break the mind. And it was only just beginning to toy with him. Ethan pressed himself against the wall, trying to catch his breath as the shapes advanced. The whispers had grown louder, forming fragmented sentences now, teasing him with glimpses of the house's secrets. The key, the blood, the door. He realized the letter from weeks ago wasn't a warning. It was a puzzle. Something inside the house might let him leave, if he understood it. Feverishly, he scanned the warped hallway. One door stood out. Unlike the others, it wasn't pulsating or covered in scratches. Its wood was old but solid, the handle gleaming faintly under the sickly glow. Above it, carved into the lintel, were letters almost invisible. Only through truth. Ethan's heart pounded. Could this be it? Was this the way out? He had no choice, he had to risk it. As he reached for the knob, the shadows recoiled slightly, hissing in frustration. A voice from deep within the darkness whispered directly into his ear. "You will pay for seeing what should remain unseen." Still, he gripped the handle and turned it, praying the cryptic message held the key to survival. The door creaked open, revealing a small, dimly lit chamber. The walls were lined with mirrors, but not ordinary mirrors. Each reflected not Ethan's present self, but horrifying scenes of the past. Moments from his childhood twisted with shadowy figures lurking just out of view, and memories of his parents, smiling, then contorting into their monstrous forms from the basement. In the center of the room stood a pedestal with a single object, an old, tarnished key. It was warm to the touch, pulsing as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Above it, words scrawled in the same glowing script from the basement read, "Face the truth and claim freedom." Ethan understood instantly. To escape, he had to confront what the house truly was, and what his family had become. He stepped closer, and the mirrors shimmered violently. The reflections lunged outward, shapes reaching for him with screaming mouths. The air filled with the voices of all the lost souls trapped in the house, crying and begging him to stop. Yet, with every ounce of courage he could muster, he reached for the key. The shadows recoiled, screeching in unison. The entity from the basement appeared at the doorway, towering and malformed, its hollow eyes locking onto him. "You cannot leave, you are ours," it hissed. Ethan swallowed his fear, gripped the key, and whispered, "I will see the truth." Ethan lifted the key, and the mirrors erupted in light. The distorted reflections screamed, twisting into one another, forming a vortex of shadow and memory. The entity lunged, but the key pulsed with a warmth that pushed it back, forcing it to recoil. A voice echoed, not from the house, but from inside Ethan himself. "Face it, accept it, or become it." He looked into the nearest mirror. Instead of his own reflection, he saw the truth. The house wasn't just alive. It was a vessel of every secret, every sin, every fear of the people who had lived within it. His parents had surrendered to it, their souls absorbed into its walls. And now it demanded him. Ethan clenched the key and whispered the one truth he couldn't deny. "I will not belong here." The light flared violently. The shadows screamed, clawing at him. But the key burned hotter, and with a forceful step, he plunged it into a hidden lock beneath the pedestal. The ground trembled, walls buckled, and the oppressive darkness began to recede. The mirrors shattered, releasing a deafening chorus of voices. One final look revealed his parents' faces, twisted and pleading in the shards. And then silence. Ethan found himself on the front lawn of the house, the sun breaking through storm clouds for the first time in years. The old house sat quietly empty, or at least it appeared so. But when he glanced back at the darkened windows, he swore he saw a pair of hollow eyes watching him. And somewhere deep inside, he knew the house had only released him, not forgotten him. The terror would never truly end.